What's up, y'all the little faith, and welcome to episode 17 of season 2 of the Fagnostic podcast. I'm your hostess, not your Moses, Matt Hayes, and if I'm still giving you episodes, it means that I'm still looking for peace in the unknown. Y'all, today I have who the Center for American Progress calls one of the 10 faith leaders to watch out for. Robyn Henderson-Espinoza, PhD, has been described in a myriad of ways: a scholar activist, scholar leader, thought leader, teacher, public theologian, ethicist, poet of moral reason, and word artist. Among these ways of describing Dr. Robyn, they are also a visionary thinker who has spent 2 decades working in the borderlands of church, academy, and movements, seeking to not only disrupt, but dismantle supremacy culture and help steward the logic of liberation as a transqueer Latinx. They enflesh a deep hope of collaborating in these borderland spaces where their work seeks to contribute to the ongoing work of collective liberation. Dr. Robyn is the founder of the Activist Theology Project, a Nashville-based collaborative project that seeks to work with the dominant culture and produces curriculum at the intersection of scholarship and activism. Dr. Robyn has been featured in fashion magazines and appeared on many different podcasts, including this one. As a scholar activist, Dr. Robyn is committed to translating theory to action so that our work in the borderlands reflects the deep spiritual work of transforming self to transforming the world. As the founder of the Activist Theology Project, Dr. Robyn is committed to the work of social healing through public theology initiatives and writes and creates both academic and other valuable resources. Dr. Robyn is a non-binary transqueer Latinx, an adult on the autism spectrum who calls Nashville, Tennessee home. They are the author of Activist Theology, published in 2019 by Broadleaf Press, and Body Becoming: A Path to Our Liberation, published by Broadleaf Press in 2022. Welcome to the show, Dr. Robyn. Dr. Robyn, thank you for being here. I'm even more excited to talk to you now because I've been just swallowing up all your videos and media the past week in prep for this interview. But I'm really just the way that you articulate things to the masses, and we'll get to what masses means in a bit, because you were being inserted into very conservative environments to talk about your life, which is so scary to me. And that's coming from a privilege that you're not even talking about. But I'm so thankful that you're here to talk to us for an hour.
Thank you. It's good to be here. I'm excited for the conversation and for the things that you're up to, and maybe ways that we can cross-pollinate. I'm always trying to get to California, so...
Yes, we love some cross-pollination.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome. Can you tell me, are you a believer?
So that's an interesting question. Because I know what it means, right? And I know what that question means. And I like to say that I follow the ways of Jesus, a brown Palestinian Jewish man who was executed by the state. And the reason why I answer it that way, partly because I'm trained as a theologian and ethicist, but secondly, to call oneself a Christian right now is to be identified with white Christo-fascism and white Christian nationalism. So I don't think that the stories of Jesus were anything near what people are claiming they are, that has come to be Christian nationalism. I mean, Jesus was resisting empire. It's what got him executed. So am I a believer? I'm probably more of a doubter than anything.
I like that. Thank you. And can you identify your pronouns for us?
So my pronouns are they, them, or doctor. If you're, a straight white man who thinks you have all the answers, you can just always call me Dr. Robyn. But my friends, they, them.
My mom is an RN, and she harped on us from day one. If someone has spent enough time and money to put DR period in front of their name or PhD after the name, you always call them doctor. So you will be Dr. Robyn to me forever and always.
Thank you. I mean, those are 7 years I don't get back at the end of my life. I just want to say.
That's very true. We had, I went to school for musical theater, and, we would interact sometimes with like the MFA people and the people that were, studying or get their doctoral. And so we called the PhD, I'm sure it's not original, we called them piled high deep.
Yes.
Because it's just like, do you really need a PhD in theater? Like, isn't the act of art just observing life and then commenting on it?
Right.
Anyway, I digress. But sometimes I do feel piled high deep, and not the good way. So let's get down to business.
Okay, I'm ready.
Tell us who Dr. Robyn is, your upbringing, and we'll go from there.
So I was born to a Mexican woman and an Anglo man in the mid 70s and lived with my Mexican mother for the first 12 years of my life. My parents separated and divorced when I was quite young. I don't remember my dad ever being at home. And I I went to Catholic school growing up and became very interested in what was happening at the Catholic school and during mass. I found a Baptist church a mile from my house and rode the bus to Sunday school and church, and it was a Baptist church. And so they had church twice on Sundays and once on Wednesdays, and church really became my safe haven. It really became a place of belonging. I was in a home with abuse and dysfunction and neglect and abandonment. And so for me, church became my family. I knew at a very young age that I was different. I didn't identify as being a girl or a boy, and grew into adulthood not not understanding myself as female or male, but somewhere in between or both and
Hmm.
this was before non-binary was a thing that it is now. And my early childhood was really riddled with violence and dysfunction and abuse. And when I was 12, I left home and I went to go live with my white father, and went from living in poverty to living in affluence. And so I have both ends of the spectrum of economic disparities or economic abundance, and wanted to go to church when I moved to live with my dad. And he liked to have a beer every once in a while, so we went to the Lutheran church because it was okay to have a beer at the Lutheran church, but not at the Baptist church, right?
Right, right.
Um, and still felt different. Couldn't put my finger on it. Still wanted to be in church, and would find rides to go to a Baptist church because at the time, I didn't really resonate with the liturgical, that sort of higher church
Hmm.
aesthetic that more liturgical traditions embody. And when I was 16, I had a brain aneurysm that really shaped me. And that was right before my senior year in high school. And then I got out and went to college and decided to become a theologian. And so I'm like a one
As one
trick pony.
does.
Right. As one does. Right.
I have so many questions already. So, one, did your Mexican mother? There must have been some resentment from her of you going to live with your affluent Anglo father. Did that cause a rift in your relationship?
Well, my mom's side of the family, who are from Mexico and through generations of migration have assimilated into the United States, there's just so much dysfunction on that side of the family. So yes, there was resentment and hurt and grief, and that relationship was already damaged because of the abuse that I was suffering. And my mom has no memory of the abuse.
Right.
She just thought she was working and providing for me, and so it's yeah, that relationship is strained. It's also strange. And I believe in boundaries, and boundaries help me love people well.
Yeah. Yeah, boundaries are of the utmost importance for sure. Regarding your aneurysm, was that a pre-existing condition? I mean, where's your health now?
So it apparently was something that I was born with, and it ruptured at the right time because I was not at home. I was at a public space, so they wouldn't release me to my stepmother, who, had I been at home, she would have just said, "Take some Advil and go to sleep." Well, I would have died.
Right.
And because I was non-responsive, they had to take me to the hospital, and they had to, I was a minor, so they had to do everything that you
Right.
do, and drug tests, and and because I complained about my head, they did a CT scan, and that's when they saw the gray matter on my brain, which indicates a fresh bleed. And yeah, I had an amazing neurosurgeon. I had 2 open craniotomies to repair the aneurysm. The blood clot was the size of an orange, and
Jesus.
I was in the hospital for several weeks in critical care for several days, but I was able to graduate high school on time and go to college and you know earn that PhD. So I think I'm
Yeah.
doing okay.
Amen. I like to hear that. And I also wonder, did you ever notice the metaphor that was being uh, uh, created for you on behalf of your aneurysm, being that you have this left and right brain and then the gray matter on the CT scan, and that was
Right.
foreshadowing your entire career and purpose?
Yeah. Yeah. I hadn't thought about that before you said that, but I do see your point. And I've also been preparing to give a TEDx talk next weekend, and so much of what I'm talking about is around how disconnected I became in my body, which is why I wrote the book Body Becoming. And I talk about how I had put so much up into my head that my head couldn't hold it, so much so that it
Yes.
burst, you know? But yeah, gray matter is gray is my favorite color. I have a gray cat. I'm non-binary.
You're wearing
I
a
like that
gray
in between
tank top
space.
right now?
I'm wearing a gray tank. Yes. This is my COVID at home outfit,
Yes.
the gray
Yes.
tank.
I love it.
But I like your outfit too. I need one of those.
My Canadian tuxedo that I
Yeah,
have. Yeah.
you think I could make it happen?
Oh, yeah. This
That
is just a thrift
that'd be popular in
store.
Nashville.
Oh, well, and you can't see it because I've got a hat on, but my hair is like Travis Tritt length, so it's like insane.
Yeah.
It's there's a ginger mop that dons this crown.
Yeah.
But yes, this is, and I actually think this is from the women's side of the thrift store I go to. But I bought it and I just cut the sleeves off because I wanted something that was denim and like just kind of. I hate
Yeah.
this, blousey, I guess.
Yeah.
But this is one of my favorite shirts, and it's like you can see it's falling apart. Like it's
Yeah.
not gonna make many more loads of laundry.
Yeah,
But, oh, well.
I have a long sleeve denim Levi's denim shirt,
Yeah.
and I like to do the monochromatic denim on denim with my blue
Yes.
glasses.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I'll bring that outfit when I come to LA, and
Thank you.
you can wear that outfit, and we can go out on the town.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. 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 Oh, I'm so excited. So I don't even know where to begin with you because you have got so much invaluable information on your website and links to talks that you've given. I think I want to hit on the one that spoke to me the most. Well, how many
Yeah.
they all spoke to me? Fuck me. Let's go backwards in order of how they're presented on the website. The last
Okay.
video, which is you spoke at it looks like a small church, like you're in some kind of fellowship hall with a bunch of old white people.
Right.
What was that?
Well, I mean, first let me say I spend a lot of time with white church folk. Well-intentioned, good-mannered. Those are the most dangerous kind, of course. Um, but yeah, I did a Trans 101 workshop in Chicago many years ago, and that's up on my website. And as you described, there were a lot of white folks there. And, these are folks who are trying to figure it out.
Of
They're
course.
curious. This is all new to them. The young people are advancing at accelerated rates and they can't keep up.
Yeah.
And I'm a big believer in connecting the dots for people. I I think that because I've spent so much time in higher education, I was privy to the gift of synthesizing information, but not everyone has that opportunity. And so I spend a lot of time connecting the dots for people. It's why I do podcast appearances, because I think that conversations are a way forward out of the bullshit mess that we've got ourselves into.
Yeah.
And I like connecting the dots. I like explaining things, and I like storytelling. I think storytelling helps us in these moments.
Do you ever feel like, because I hear what you're saying about that being a gift of yours to be able to connect the dots for people, to be able to facilitate these conversations, but do they take a toll on your spirit? I mean, it is not your responsibility to educate people what they can educate themselves on. But I wonder if this ever feels like a burden to you, if like you fortunately were able to find your honesty and authenticity in being who you are, and then you felt the call to go on and help other people understand how
Yeah.
important it is for you to, like, does it make sense what I'm asking?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you because I don't know any other way to be. For the past 2.5 years, I've worked 7 days a week at lower compensation than
Yeah.
before the pandemic hit. And at the end of July, my birthday is on the 30th of July, and I had some friends over, and I was just really real with them. And I said, I think I've been suffering from low level burnout. I need a break. And that following Wednesday, my partner and I headed to Mexico, which is where my mother's family is from. And we just took a week to rest, recover, restore, repair, siesta, etc. It does take a toll on me. And, unfortunately, there are more needs out there than there are people who want
Yeah.
to help do the collective care. And so there are many of us working overtime to connect the dots, to provide pastoral care, to provide community care. And it's hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was very tired at the end of July.
Yeah. So, but you do feel a little more rested now and able to
Yeah,
connect.
I mean, I got to Mexico, and one of the things I love is just functioning in Spanish and being able
Mm.
to communicate in Spanish. It's the language of my heart in many respects, and you met some great people, got some good sun on my face, hung out at the pool a couple days, hung out at the beach one day, and just was able to reconnect with my partner. And I didn't take a computer with me, and I was off social media.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got good rest, and I need to be doing that more often.
Yes.
Is what I learned.
Especially with
I
how much you give, you've got to.
Yeah, yeah, so I just I can't output at the rate that I have been for the past 2.5 years, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
I mean, in the very beginning of the pandemic, I was recording like 2 and 3 talks a week, and I had a whole setup with camera. I mean, it was a lot. And so the break was overdue, but it is here, and I think
Yeah.
that we're gonna take another break in December. We have miles on Southwest, so I think we'll go back to Mexico and just get away for a week.
Yeah.
And it's easy to do that when you have airline points,
Yeah.
and you can help people can help you find a cheap place to stay.
Yeah.
So it's very doable, and I look forward to the next time we're able to get away.
Hell yes. So you grew up in Longview, Texas. I don't know, are you familiar with Sorted Lives or Del Shores by chance?
Yeah.
Okay, so I work for Dell. He's my business partner, and
Uh-huh.
he's actually directing me in a film that I just wrote. In October, we're filming it. But he has, in the Sorted Lives sequel, A Very Sorted Wedding, maybe it's in the original actually, Leslie Jordan's character, Brother Boy, is in a mental facility in Longview, Texas.
Oh,
And
wow.
so whenever I see Longview or hear somebody talk about Longview, in the film, Leslie or Brother Boy always calls it long fucking view. And
Yeah.
so I only hear long fucking view whenever I
Yeah.
hear Longview. But you
Yeah.
you from Longview, and then you moved to San Antonio.
Yeah. Yeah, I was
Okay.
born in Longview, lived there for 12 years, went to Catholic school there, then moved to San Antonio, and grew up in the hill, spent 4 years in the hill country,
Oh yeah.
and then left when I was 17, and didn't have a it wasn't really interesting because I had the brain aneurysm. My family didn't deal well with that. I graduated from high school on time. It was a bit of a medical miracle that I survived it, number one, but my family thought I was crazy because something happened to my head.
Mm,
And when I went off to college, it's when I discovered myself. I
yep.
sort of was like, and I didn't have this language, but I was like, I'm not female or male. What am I? Well,
Right.
I'm trans, And it was only until I got to Chicago that I was like, oh, I think I'm transgender. But I came out in college, and I was at a Baptist university and
Which
had
one?
to Hardin Simmons University in Abilene, Texas.
Yeah, cool.
And I had to remain closeted until I got to Chicago because of how complicated those religious schools are.
Yeah.
But I was a bit disowned by my dad and that side of the family, because of my choices. And that's unfortunate because my dad and I were best friends when I was growing up. And, he was a white supremacist. He was racist. But he was good to me in many
Despite his
respects.
child being interracial.
Right. Oh yeah, that was a whole listen, girl. He wanted me to check the Hispanic box so I would get money for being mixed
Stop.
race. Yeah. So at a very
Like,
early
what's
age,
what's more important to you, being a bigoted supremacist or getting a good deal on college? You tell
right.
me.
Exactly. Oh, he wanted both. He wanted a good deal and to remain bigoted. So we just had a very complicated relationship. Yet, before I had the brain aneurysm, we would go to the lake every weekend. I'd ski and kneeboard and, do all the water sports. And, we really were able to connect. But my affinity for the ways of Jesus seemed to destabilize his own bullshit. And so, and I talk about this in the book, he had undocumented workers, which he called wetbacks, working on his land. And I would ask about that. And it didn't go anywhere. And so his response to me in my gaining agency and learning how to respond to him, I'm trained in philosophy, so I learned logic at a young age in college. He would say, you talk like a used car salesman, because he didn't know how to engage with me. I was able to argue in a way that debunked his thought. And so it's unfortunate that I
It
lost
is.
that. But
But in that, I mean, you would never have been able to gain yourself had you not lost that.
well, that's the trade-off, right? I
Yeah.
mean, uh, and there's some scripture about that. I
Well,
mean,
let's jump to the scripture because I think what can be very triggering for a lot of heteronormative Christian evangelicals is when a queer person takes their scripture and claims it as their own. And so I
yeah.
love that you can you give me an idea of, like, did you have a bit of time whenever you were coming out to yourself as trans or non-binary, where you were like, okay, this is all that I know of Christianity, so fuck you, God, fuck you, Christians, like, get out of my house, Jesus. Like, did you ever have a period of time like that?
I mean, every day. I feel like that's every day for me. Uh, yeah. I mean, I can remember living in Chicago and making the decision to leave the church because this white gay male pastor couldn't hold my identification as a queer person.
Wait, whoa, 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 whoa. A gay preacher could not affirm a trans person's experience and faith.
He said that I had an allergy to myself because I identified as queer.
He
So,
It's like one of
so
those episodes of Jerry Springer and Maury Povich when it's like the black people that hate black people or the gay people that hate
right,
gay people. Oh my
right,
God.
right. So that is what prompted me to leave the church. I was like, oh, so if a white gay man can't see me, and is saying that I have an allergy to myself because I identify as queer. And, there's no curiosity around that. There was, or I felt like there was no curiosity around that. And that was the end. No repair, no suturing the wounds. Um, and, and I have found that there are a lot of people out there, that's just how they do relationships. And that is not how I was raised. I was raised with an orientation to relationship. And I'm a Leo and very loyal to people, and relationships mean everything to me.
Yeah.
And I try to do my work through relationship, not through transactions. And so I think you can see the influence of, neoliberal American values show up in the church. And one of these is the inability to hold complexities with people in the church.
Yeah. Because I think it's almost for them, it's like a Pandora's box situation of, if they start asking questions, what else might unravel in their mind?
Right.
And that's scary.
Right.
That's why I say I do have a grace for people that cannot get out of the binary, because it is horrifying if you're 40 years old and that's all you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I kind of want to just run down this list of the
Yeah.
things I made notes of and just get you to say, okay, this topic, go.
Yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm ready.
But quickly give us a rundown on activist theology, because that is the theology to which you kind of claim as your own. So tell us what that, because it sounds, when I watched the video about it on your website, it sounds like a very secular effort. But it's based, for you at least, it is based in a very intimate relationship with the divine.
Yeah, so I wrote a book it was published in 2019. It's called Activist Theology. And I ended up launching my scholarship after I left my faculty post in Berkeley, California. I launched my scholarship as a collaborative project, which is called the Activist Theology Project. And, that work comes from the tradition of theology of liberation. It comes from a tradition of God has a preferential option for those who are the most marginalized and the most impacted by oppression. And it's my attempt to talk about theology not only as meaning making, but as ethical praxis. So the way we live our lives, where we buy our groceries, where we buy our coffee, those are all theological decisions. But we often don't think about it that way because of the ways in which theology and the church and Christianity has been socialized in this country. We often don't think theology has anything to do with social issues. But I think theology has everything to do with social issues. And we are each theologians. We are all, each of us are making theological decisions all the time, every day, 24/7. So I write this book basically to say theology doesn't belong in the academy. It belongs in the streets. It belongs in the sheets. It belongs at the table. And some of the best theologians are children and those who are most impacted by oppression. So queer folks, trans folks, people of color, disabled people, etc.
Yes. Okay, thank you. So now that we got that out of the way, because that does inform, I think, every answer you're going to give on this list.
Yeah.
And the things that I wrote down are things that I just thought, God, I wish I had the brain cells to come up with a way to describe that concept they just talked about. Liturgy of violence. Go.
So liturgy is a word that means work of the people. And when I talk about liturgies of violence, I'm literally talking about the work of the people, what communities are perpetuating as violence. So I think I talk about that in context of Charlottesville. Mm-hmm. And so when we're thinking about Charlottesville, I was there in 2017. It literally was a liturgy of violence, and it were crowds of people, militiamen, very angry with their guns, and like when neo-Nazis lunged in my direction and my security detail picked me up to whisk me away, that was a very sobering moment for me.
And yet, you still are committed to sustainable relationships of difference.
Yeah.
Talk about that. There's 3 pieces to that you've discussed in some of the things that I've watched. Be attentive.
Yeah.
The dismantling, and then the leaning into differences.
Yeah. So honestly, I just think relationships will save us, and we have forgotten how to be real, and we have forgotten how to be human with one another. so I'm very curious about how do we recover relationality with one another.
Right.
Um, so many of us are disconnected from ourselves, which then translates into being disconnected from others. And so this disassociation and this disembodiment is actually central to how we chart a path forward. So I write about this in Body Becoming, which is my second book that came out in March, that being connected to ourselves will actually help create, like, embodiment will help create a better democracy, because it will help steward a better cultural body that is connected and embodied. So for me, then I gotta lean in. I gotta lean into all different sorts of things, things that make me feel uncomfortable, things that give me euphoria. But at the end of the day, it's about relationships, and it's always about leaning in and trusting the effort of leaning in. Now, it doesn't always work, because there are a lot of people who would rather be polarized than fostering a togetherness. But like, one of the things that
I don't know what you mean. That just seems like such a distant concept.
Right. I mean, one of the things that I'm working on right now is figuring out, how do we start sharing meals together across lines of difference? We are siloed right now. All the queer folks are getting together at Pride, at these corporate Pride events, but there's no community events. So, like, how do we bridge those differences, and how do we build containers for right relationship?
Yes. It's interesting, because I think a lot of it is going back to work, and it's having the mess hall, the lunchrooms for employees. I mean, even my dad's going to kill me for telling this story, but it's one of my favorite dad stories, and it's so beautiful, and it speaks to his soul in a way that I don't even know if he realizes. But he works at a plant in Alabama, at a manufacturing plant, and he has a coworker that I guess started. This is probably 3 or 4 years ago at this point. And he called me one day. My parents have been through their own journey with, coming to grips with me as it relates to their own faith, as we all have or whatever. And thankfully, it's turned out great, and we're very close, and they're fully affirming and supportive and stuff. But anyway, he calls me and says, "Son, I want to talk to you about something." I was like, "Okay." He goes, "Well, I got this. There's this woman at work, and well, she's transferring." And I said, "Okay, like to another plant, or like, where's she going?" He goes, No. She's transferring, like she's changing. And I said, "Do you mean transitioning, Dad?" He goes, Yeah, that's the word. And I said, "Okay." And he goes, "Well, I just want to know, how do I talk to her? What do I say?" And I said, "Well, what are you doing now?" He goes, "Well, I'll sit down with her at lunch and ask her how her day is, and if she's making friends." And I said, "Dad, that's all she wants. That's all." And I said, "Are you sure that they identify as she now, or do you think that they were maybe transitioning from identifying as she?" He goes, No, she's she. I know that for sure." I said, "Okay." He said, I just want her to feel normal and safe." And I said, "Then that's all you have to do, is just ask her how day is." That's there's no like notoriety that she wants about this, especially at the workplace. But that spoke to me in a way of like, neither one of them would have had that exchange in a COVID era. And that's heartbreaking on both of their parts, because she would not have seen somebody who looks like a problem, be affirming, and he would not have had the exposure to someone not like himself in order to expand his own mind.
Yeah. I mean, those are the moments we need.
Yeah.
Those moments of, like, generative imagination in relationship, because I think something special happens in those moments.
Yeah.
And yes, I want my pronouns to be right, but if I can have connection with someone, that matters more than if they get my pronouns right.
Interesting.
Like, and I'm not saying that my pronouns don't matter. They do. But we have forgotten how to be connected with ourselves and each other.
Yeah.
And that has put a significant strain on our cultural body, so much so that we've domesticated polarization. We have made polarization commonplace, that it's the thing to do.
Do y'all see what I mean? And that I had to write down everything that they were saying in these videos, because the way that you are able to just put a concise description of a concept and just spit it out as if it's no big thing. The domestication of, what was it?
Polarization.
The domestication of polarization. That is, God, that's incredible. But you're so right. We've normalized it.
Yeah.
And it's also being, I mean, people are making money. It's being capitalized. People are making money off of it.
Right.
And that's
millions.
Millions. And I, will attest that, like, I have a cable subscription just so I have access to CNN. But I also know the damage that it causes me. And I have to be very aware of that in order to not be spewed, things that are meant to get me to keep watching or to treat people differently, in an incorrect way.
Well, let me tell you this. Before the pandemic, I would have MSNBC on all the time, all day. I'd turn it on when I got up. I'd turn it off when I'd work with the TV on. And I noticed that when I would go to the doctor, I was also flying a lot, speaking. But when I would go to the doctor, my blood pressure would be elevated, and my therapist, because I go to therapy every week. Therapy saves my life every week.
As we all should be.
I asked my therapist, "You're not retiring anytime soon, right? Like we're in this, right, till the end." My therapist assures me that she's not retiring. I might drive her to retirement one day. But my therapist said, "Have you ever thought about turning the news off?" And as soon as I turned the news off, my blood pressure returned, my sleep returned. I mean, it's
I know.
It really destroys our livability.
Yes, even with people that we might agree with, because when you are being fed that, you go out and not only do you cling to people that are of like mind, but you also bitch about the others to the people that you agree with. So it becomes everywhere. Like I can't get in an Uber without something coming up political, and but being aware of that, I work diligently to limit my news intake because I do want to be informed, but I also I would prefer mental health at this point because I'm no longer on Lexapro, and so I'm very aware of my triggers and the things that stress me out. Tell me a bit about public theology.
So public theology is a term or a phrase that gets used to describe the ways in which theology is made manifest in the public square. It really is birthed out of a moment in time. So if you think about Martin Luther King Jr., he was a public theologian, and his work emerged from a movement. And I've since stopped using the term public theology to describe myself. I think I'm more of a politicized theologian and a public ethicist. Because my theology is a particular sort of quality, brand, and style. And brand, I don't mean capitalistic brand. I just mean it's a particular flavor that ain't for everybody, But public theology is I think we're all public theologians. We're all in the public square, but it it often gets used by people who like Cornel West or Reverend Jackie Lewis or, Martin Luther King Jr., people who have a platform, who are, have some sort of perch to do public teaching. And for some reason, I have been graced with the ability to be in the public square, but I swim upstream because and I tell people this too, like I get conscripted into progressive Christianity, but I have to remind people I'm not a progressive Christian. I'm a liberationist. Progressive Christianity doesn't go far enough for me. But nobody wants to Nobody wants to pick up the liberation stream, so I get conscripted into progressive Christianity.
What do you think is the difference or the line between progressive Christianity and liberationism?
Well, liberationist thought wants to talk about essentially bringing heaven to earth.
Yeah.
And they use the phrase the reign of God. Progressive Christianity
Reign of
wants
God is
to,
in REIGN.
right, right. REIGN, yeah. Um, Progressive Christianity, it just doesn't hold my political or theological commitments in that way.
Yeah.
It's I don't know that progressive Christianity is committed to bringing heaven to earth. It wants to change the system for itself, so it feels a little bit narcissistic instead of dismantling, burning it all down and bringing heaven to earth, the New Jerusalem, the beloved community. So yeah, progressivism, like if you go to the doctor and they say, Matt, what you've got is progressivism. That just doesn't sound good. Like progressing to what?
Right.
Whereas liberation, to me, captures abolition and freedom and the kind of world, the ethical future that we want. And so, yeah, I'm a liberationist.
There's also a sense of responsibility that I think is connotated with liberationist versus progressive Christianity, because
Absolutely.
Progressive Christianity, I think, is actually a little bit of a crutch. It kind of satisfies your own ego of like,
Right.
okay, like I'm affirming, I'm accepting, like I've done my part, cool, thank you, Lord, good night. Whereas
Right.
liberation is like, no, you have to get out in the streets and like
Right.
work to, like you just said, dismantle, disrupt.
Right. Right. Yeah, and
Discourse.
often I find, and I would be curious about this with your listeners, often I find that progressive Christians don't have a class analysis. So they are all fine and good with earning as much money as they can and giving none of it away and like hoarding social capital. And I think, that's the one thing that we have got to fix in this country is we all need to have a class analysis. And if we are not in solidarity with the poor and working class, then your allyship means shit to me.
Say it for the people in the back.
Right.
Yes. You're so right. I also loved something you said about your theology, your theology being harm reduction.
Uh-huh.
Talk about that for a minute.
Well, I think about a friend of mine who actually lives in the LA area, Tristan Taramino. She sent me a pen that says, do no harm, take no shit. And that's kind of how I think about theology, that we should always endeavor to do no harm. So if it harms someone to refer to God as male or father, then change your language. Do no harm.
Yeah.
Yeah, harm reduction is being trauma informed and knowing where those pitfalls are for people with religious trauma or church trauma or the ways in which Christianity has been weaponized against LGBTQIA folks. And so I try to do theology in the vein of harm reduction as best as I can.
Love it. It's like an example of what I said a while ago of just like the way that you articulate such a broad, expansive concept into a concise, just a couple of words. It just, everything you say, I just have so many things written down about you. But because we just hit on the gender of the divine, I do want to skip to the bottom of my list and we'll come back. Because, and I have to hit everything because there's so much good shit that you've given us, and I want to make sure my listeners hear it. So in my own work, or spiritual work of either deconstructing or reclaiming or reassigning whatever it is, I have come to a place of one of the reasons I'm still claiming agnostic is because where if I'm to believe in God, it is you, it is me, it is my dog, it is the trees in my view. It's every living thing made of quantum matter. In that, where I'm seeing the divine, I'm also seeing the devil,
Mm.
because I share a species name with people that are vile and
Hmm.
evil and bigoted and mean. And that's why I'm having a hard time deciding if I believe in anything, because where I'm seeing beauty and hope and love, I'm also seeing the converse. Okay?
Hmm.
So, in that, if God is that expansive, I think God supersedes gender or sexuality. So I refuse to call, I mean, like if I do, I might do it as a joke, just to be silly about something, but I refuse to call God a gender. I just don't believe that there is a possibility of
Yeah.
God being a he. And even like in the, in
Right.
the, in the Hebrew for the Holy Spirit, I think the Holy Spirit is a she pronoun, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's already a confliction of genders within the Holy Trinity, which I find beautiful and interesting, but it can be scary for people. I get it.
Yeah.
So all that to say, I've kind of decided, and I shouldn't say decided because I would value your input on this. I'm wondering, and maybe it's just because of my obsession with the gray right now, and I'm so angry at the binary. Are we all non-binary to a point? Because these structures of gender normativity are just constructs that are placed upon us. Now, while I do go into the world and present, looking by comparison, how you put it, more masculine of center, which I love that description to talk
Yeah.
about the scale and the
Yeah.
spectrum. But what are your thoughts on the possibility of all of us being non-binary?
Well, I very much like this idea actually because well, let me start here. Biology is not determined. It is socially constructed. Why? Because biology exists in a social world. Um, Gender is also socially constructed and is a category that was used during Enlightenment time to be able to categorize people. Gender has then evolved into how we locate people in time and space, which is severely limiting for a lot of people who feel gender fluid, gender queer.
Uh,
Um, and so what happens when we say all gender is drag, for example?
right. Yeah.
Then what happens with our performance in the world?
We can preach to the choir, but to people that are holding on to their red letters, the Holy Bible, the
Yeah.
inspired, infallible Word of God,
Yeah.
and conversing with them the way that you so masterfully do, and the way that I so masterfully do not do. You referenced Jacob and Esau, and I know this story very well, and I've never thought about it in a gender nonconforming way. It's in the Genesis, the fraternal twins, sons of Isaac and Rebekah.
There are a lot of stories in the scriptures. Jacob and Esau, we've got Joseph, the coat of many colors. A lot of these stories help expand our imagination. I'm also getting ready to go to Israel and Palestine, and so these stories are much more real for me, and I'm taking a Bible with me to the Middle East.
Pack a Torah and a Quran as well, just to make sure you're
That cover all
covered.
my
Yeah,
bases.
yeah.
Right. Um, yeah, so I read the Bible for study, but I'm taking it with me on this pilgrimage that I'm going on. So that's just a side note. When I think about Jacob and Esau and the wrestling,
Because it's over Esau's birthright.
right,
But one of them is described as like very masculine, hairy, and the other one who stays home with mom
right,
is the opposite. And we just
right.
float over that Bible story as if it's just like a menial description. But in reality, is it not advocating for someone who doesn't identify as a hunter gatherer, who might be born with a penis?
Well, and I also want to raise up how often we see this story played out even today. The sort
Yeah.
of toxic masculinity that is preferred over what I call a generative masculinity or an ethical masculinity. And
Define those two.
so when I think about generative masculinity or ethical masculinity, I am thinking about a masculinity that is in conversation with all parts of masculinity, which has to include femininity or the divine feminine. When I talk about being masculine of center, I do dose testosterone. I do have to shave my face. I don't have a nice beard, ginger beard like you. I'm working on it.
Good.
I'm working on the beard, and one day maybe we could take a photo of our beards.
Yes.
But when I think about generative masculinity or ethical masculinity, I'm thinking about a masculinity that has a praxis that is rooted in justice and that is rooted in love for all creation, all living beings, and a kind of compassion for those who are most impacted. Now, the Latin root for compassion is suffering with. So does your compassion suffer with those who are most vulnerable, those who are most impacted? When I think about an ethical masculinity or generative masculinity, that's what I'm thinking about.
Wow. Yeah. Thank you. Something that spoke to me also that really resonated was when you said that white people can be really quick to move to resurrection.
Yeah.
And I have in my own because while you cannot choose your privilege, you can be aware of it enough to go into the streets, and so to cross that line from progressive to liberationist.
Right.
I don't know where I am on which side of that line I am all the time.
Yeah.
But being aware of it, I do try my hardest to be on the liberationist side. I have a lot of work to do. But in that, I have come to a realization that my optimism, my hope, my gratitude are also coming from a place of privilege. It is easier for me to come to grips with myself than it would be if I were not white or not cisgender. And so when you spoke about white people being quick to move to resurrection, is that kind of what you meant? Is that it can be easier for some people to kind of reconcile their faith and sexuality?
Well, I think that is an outcome of that phrase. What I mean when I say that is we don't know how to sit in the unknown or the uncertainty or the gray space, the gray matter. We don't know how to we don't know how to sit with nuance. Even when I was in my mid-20s and I identified as queer, I still identify as queer, but I don't mean that as an identity. I mean that as a particular orientation to everything that I do, not just a sexual orientation.
Right.
And so the fact that this white gay pastor couldn't return to me curiosity
at the least, at the minimum,
right, it is for me is that moving from crucifixion to resurrection, and his response to me is, you need more professional development.
It's just I cannot get over this because is there more work to do on behalf of trans people in our community? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But to hear someone blatantly disregard your identity, your truth, your authenticity, for whatever reason, whether it be their own fear of maybe being similar to you,
right,
or maybe their own, they are still trying to appease the old white man of the church, by not going too far to the left.
Right.
I don't know. I can't get over that. It breaks my heart that you had to go through that, but it also, I think, liberated you to really expand the consciousness of why you're here so that you can then expand your impact on this earth.
Yeah, I think that was an important moment for me. That was during my ordination process, actually. And it was a really important moment for me to be able to say my allegiance, my loyalty is not to the institutional church. It is to the ways of a brown Palestinian Jew. And I went and did 4 units of clinical pastoral education, which is the normal training or the typical training for chaplaincy. And I did that as a discernment tool to whether I would go on to do the PhD. And let me tell you, that training, I mean, talk about a faith unravel. Everything unraveled for me during those 4 units. I was the only trans person, the only queer person, the only Latinx, the only person of color in my group. Um, it was really hard. I felt like no one understood me except this guy named Jason, who is a Mormon and Latter-day Saint and chaplain in the army. Um, and I saw very sick people. I got invited to funerals. I sat with dead bodies whose family wouldn't come see them.
Mm-hmm.
So my everything that I had accumulated in my mind was sort of put to the test in these 4 units, this year and a half of training that I did. And it was the most humbling process that I had been a part of. I left the church. I did this chaplain training. I went off and did a PhD. And basically, I said, fuck it all. I'm
Yeah.
going to study and I want to try to imagine ethical futures. And then the church started inviting me back into the pulpit. It's a very strange experience.
It sounds, it sounds like it. You talk about the kingdom of God, not the kingdom, but the kingdom as in Kin.
Yeah.
Give us a rundown on that.
Well, I mean, I think that this goes back to, does patriarchal language harm us? And does it create imaginations of harm? Yes. And can we imagine a more relational way to think about togetherness? Or when we talk about bringing heaven to earth, what does that look like? And I think it looks like a relationship, which is why I use that term kingdom, because it's about kinship. We share, we are deeply radically interconnected to all things,
Mm-hmm.
but we don't live like it.
Yep,
We
yep,
live
yep.
this separate life. But if we are really all kin, you and I are kin, me and the birds, me and the squirrel, if we're all kin, then how do we steward that relationality? And that's what I'm trying to do in the world.
One of the reasons that I hate leaving my house is because I am challenged with that concept on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And I find it much easier to love people if I'm not around people.
Right.
But the challenge that I have been given through what you just said, and also through some things I've watched you online as well and read about, is that is exactly the purpose of going and being around the people, is to prove, or not to prove to yourself that you love people, but to accept the challenge and to know that if this is where I'm going to find the divine's presence and reality is in other things of quantum matter, it's got to inform my behavior in interacting with those other living beings, even and especially with those who drive me up the fucking wall.
Right.
There's an opportunity everywhere to interact with the divine, because
Yeah.
the divine is in theory everywhere. It's ubiquitous.
Well, and you've used this term twice now, and I just want to mention something
Am I in
about it,
trouble?
because no,
Okay.
because I wrote my dissertation on matter and
Okay.
becoming, and so I just want to talk a little bit about matter. And you're using this phrase quantum matter, and I just want to say that all things are imbued with they're all endowed with spirit, with matter is alive, matter is always becoming. The first atomic theory was created by Lucretius, and you can see this theory of becoming all throughout philosophy and history, which I write about in my PhD dissertation. And essentially my argument is that everything is a body, and everything is becoming, and everything is connected, but we have created ideologies, theologies, and practices that fundamentally separate things, so that we don't embrace the fully endowed reality of life. And so even though we are talking through technology, and our electrochemical sensors are telling us to nod and whatnot, there is a connection here.
Yeah.
Even though I'm in Nashville and you're in LA, wherever you are in LA, there is a plumb line of connection. And when we recover that for ourselves and each other, we will be a better society. We will be a different society. We
Yeah.
will be something like what Jesus was trying to create in those early days.
Yeah. You're so right. And I hope that happens. Do you have hope for that to happen?
You know, I'm a person of deep hope because if I give myself over to hopelessness, which I think is ludicrous, I don't have hope in our current system, but I have hope in the work that the village is doing to help steward another possible world. I have to have hope, or I'll just become nihilistic and
Yeah.
put my head in the ground.
What do you mean by another
And
world?
just to well, let me just say this. In your phrase about agnostic, I think that's the truest Christian response to belief.
I agree.
Um,
I
be,
agree.
because I don't think we have the epistemological capacity to actually believe, but that is what faith is about.
Right.
And so agnosticism is actually, the sort of I don't know, but help my unbelief,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's the most sort of faithful response any of us can have, and it's the response that I have every day.
Yeah. I actually just changed the intro to the podcast because I've been saying for, over a year now, if I'm still giving you episodes, it means I'm still looking for answers. And it's since become, if I'm still giving you episodes, it means that I'm still looking to find peace in the unknown.
Yeah.
Because I've learned that what I thought was terrifying about the unknown
Yeah.
and resent inducing about the unknown is actually a really beautiful space to play, grow,
Yeah.
love.
Yep. Yep. Now, I'm sorry I interrupted you. What was your question?
What is this other world that you speak of? The one that, because you said you don't believe in the current state of the system.
Yeah, I don't think that our current system is working for anyone.
Being politically or religiously or both?
Both. The world as it is designed is not working.
Yeah. That's why
And
it's
also
trying to kill
working
us.
right, and also working by design, right?
Yeah.
It's designed to marginalize. And I'm very interested in ethical futures. I'm interested in another possible world. I'm interested in bringing heaven to earth. And so I think about, how do we start eating together again? How do we start coming to the table? What does it look like for us to be community? How do we begin to practice mutual aid at the end of empire, because capitalism is killing us all? There is enough to go around, but how do we really steward our resources in a way that allows everyone to have enough? That's what I'm interested in.
And you believe it's possible?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think I wouldn't continue. I'd go get a job at Apple if
Yeah.
if I didn't think it was possible. I used to work for Apple. That's why I said that.
Well, now I know who I'm going to call whenever I have any issues.
Oh yeah, please.
I'm kidding. I would never. I have a few friends who have very specific, career establishments, and I'm always like, "Ooh, can I call my pharmacist friend to ask about this medication? Does it mix with alcohol? Okay, or
Oh, I do that all the time. I'm notorious for. I call my medical doctor friends, and I'm like, okay, I fell. This happened. What do I
Right.
need to do? So yeah.
Tell me one last thing before we kind of wrap up. The logic of dominance, and I forget why I wrote that down, but what is that?
So when I talk about the logic of dominance, I am talking about, logic is this kind of step-by-step framework of understanding that for me parlays into a matrix of oppression. So the logic of dominance by nature is pernicious and evil, and is rooted in supremacy culture. And so the logic that comes from supremacy culture is a kind of logic that is going to dominate and kill. and exploit and extract
and colonize
and colonize, right? And it's and logic, sort of by definition is a framework, right? I mean, the things, it's like a Rubik's cube. It fits together, and we need to be very careful about our subjectness to the logic of dominance, how we are complicit in the logic of dominance, and how we are all deeply compromised by the logic of dominance.
What would you say to the divine were they standing before you right now?
Well, I feel like the divine is, because what separates me and you is the divine possibility of life. And so I would respond to you, thank you for your deep posture of welcome of me.
That's what I'm getting more and more of is if I'm going to believe that everything is the divine and the divine is everything, this question no longer really makes sense, because I ask every guest at the end of every episode that question, but I kind of thinking I'm going to be rephrasing it or asking something different, because we've just explored what you would say to the divine were they standing before you through the past hour. Not to say that like I'm the divine, but you know what I mean. That there's
well, I mean, God became human so that humans could become divine. This is what's lost in the tradition, right? This is called theosis.
Yeah.
And we have to remember that we embody the divine possibility, but we don't teach that anymore.
Yeah. Dr. Robyn, you have challenged me, you've encouraged me, you have taught me things, and I also want to give gratitude, because it should not be your job and your burden to do that for this world, but I thank you for being aware of how impactful your words are, so that you can lessen yourself to fools like me to be able to speak to me where I'm at. I just have been craving this conversation with you for so long, and I'm so thankful it worked out in your crazy schedule. I'm just so in awe of your work and thankful for your impact, because you, like I said a minute ago about how, it's almost in recognizing that hope and gratitude is a privilege. For me not to have it is a slap in the face to everyone else doing the work. And I apologize for that, and I thank you for doing it in spite of my dumbass. I look forward to seeing. I'm in Nashville. I mean, not as much as I'd like to be anymore, but I'm from about an hour and a half south of Nashville.
Yeah.
So I usually fly into Nashville whenever I go home to visit my family. But next time I'm there, there's actually a couple guests that are in Nashville that I've been like, we have to. Jennifer Knapp is there. There's a couple others. So we'll have to figure it out. Or if you're ever in LA, we'll have to.
I would love to sit down over a meal. That would be great.
Yes, like you just said, share a meal. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I love to cook, so I'll cook you something grand.
Great. I look forward to it.
Yes, Dr. Robyn, have a wonderful rest of your week. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time, okay?
Thanks so much. It's good to be here.
And all the people say, gay man. Y'all, thanks for listening to another episode of the Fagnostic Podcast, hosted by me, Matt Hayes. Now, I want you to go check out our brand new site, fagnostic.com, and see what we're doing with the brand. I'm developing an online resource center for LGBTQ people looking to overcome or contribute to overcoming religious trauma. The podcast is now part of the greater Fagnostic network of resources, the book club, the playlist, the blog, the merch, the news articles, the artists, and so much more. So, if you know any queer or queer-friendly doctors, lawyers, specialists, preachers, volunteer opportunities, mentors, or anyone else that might be of service to a queer person escaping religion, send them my way. You can reach me at info@fagnostic.com. Now, please go subscribe, review, and share this podcast. And in the meantime, y'all have a blessed day, and peace be with all y'all.
Hi, Michael Spicer here. Matt Hayes forgot to put my name in the credits of his podcast as the composer, but I'm here to tell you that I wrote the music for his podcast. Whatever it's called, I don't know.